Is there any man without mistakes? I doubt it. Not even the great UFC president Dana White, who has helped in bringing the UFC to where it is today as the biggest MMA promotion. Dana White, being a businessman with great business acumen, has helped build the UFC over the years, but undoubtedly has made a couple of mistakes he regrets ever making. Watch this video to the end to find out what a successful man like Dana White regrets ever doing. Stay tuned. Number 9. The Henry Cejudo Saga. The ninth on the list of the top regrets that the UFC president Dana White has in the UFC is allowing Henry Cejudo to have a shot at the bantamweight championship title. Before that occurrence, the UFC was not so interested in the smaller weight classes and thus was putting little effort into the promotions of fights in the lower divisions since they didn't really attract the attention of fans. The UFC flyweight division, being in the lower division, was also lurking below the radar, even with Demetrius Johnson being the champion at the time. After Henry Cejudo defeated Demetrius Johnson to become the flyweight champion, Dana White finally found someone capable of attracting as much attention as possible. Henry Cejudo, being an Olympic gold medalist who already had gained the interest of American audiences, was capable of this. Cejudo moved up in weight to be able to compete against Marlon Moraes for the UFC bantamweight title in 2019. He won and became the fourth fighter to hold 2 consecutive UFC titles after the likes of Amanda Nunes, Conor McGregor, and Daniel Cormier. He defended his title in a bout against Dominic Cruz at UFC 249 in 2020 and then announced his retirement from fighting. This came so suddenly that Dana White was left with a division with no champion. If Dana White knew, he would not have allowed Cejudo to compete for the bantamweight title. One would know it's still a regret Dana White has in his recent response to Cejudo's desire for a comeback to fight with Alexander Volkanovski for the featherweight championship title. Dana regarded the idea as a silly conversation. He said, for Cejudo to retire and then just think he should be able to come in and jump into any weight division and take on the champion, it's not how it works. Number 8. Signing Chris Cyborg. Next on the list of Dana White's top regrets is the signing of Chris Cyborg. Their relationship that started quite on a good note ended in a disaster. Chris Cyborg's contract with UFC was signed in March 2015, but she made her first appearance in the promotion in May, the following year at UFC 198. It was first difficult finding opponents for the 34-year-old fighter until an entire division was designed for her. This was the beginning of the women's featherweight division in the UFC. Dana and Cyborg had been having some hurdles in their relationship for some time, but it heightened after her contract ended with the UFC when she fought against Felicia Spencer at 240 and released a video on her YouTube page showing a backstage conversation between both of them. The video portrayed Dana White in a bad light as she claimed she was being bullied by the UFC president, but it was later revealed that subtitles from the discussion had been falsely displayed. Dana White told a reporter how he had grown tired of the relationship with Chris Cyborg and was not willing to renew the contract. He said, dealing with her has been a nightmare the entire time she's been here. It's been a bad experience dealing with Cyborg since day one, never happy, complaining about everything. She was a nightmare to deal with. He further said, I don't think there's any peace between me and Cyborg. Number 7. The Tito Ortiz boxing match. The 7th regret on this list has to do with the deteriorated relationship between Dana White and Tito Ortiz. Dana White used to be Tito Ortiz's manager, but their relationship went down the drain when Dana became the face of the UFC president. They used to constantly have clashes, raining insults on each other, and it got to a time that their clash peaked to the extent that the two were scheduled to fight each other in a boxing match. Dana White accepted and even got as far as weighing in, but the fight didn't materialize as Ortiz didn't turn up. Dana claims if the fight ever held, he would have won, saying, "He challenged me. I trained for it, I brought in real guys, I spent real time really training for this fight, and I was absolutely going to do it." He blinked. I would have won. I absolutely would have won that boxing match. But later, regretting all that happened, White said, if I could go back in time, I wouldn't do it. Ortiz also showed remorse after his Bellator outing in 2017 for how this relationship with White had gone worse over the years. Number 6. Signing CM Punk. Signing CM Punk can be regarded as a not-so-great investment for Dana White. CM Punk was signed by the UFC, and this decision was scorned by everyone as he was just a rookie with no prior record or experience in MMA. He was considered as not worthy of the privilege given to him to fight in the UFC, unlike other better fighters who were trying so hard to get signed by the promotion. CM Punk suffered straight defeats to Mickey Gall and Mike Jackson in his first 2 fights in the UFC. With this, Dana White was reluctant to give him another try, and that was the end of his UFC career. On the night of his loss to Mike Jackson, he said, "No, it should be a wrap. The guy's 39 years old. We gave him 2 shots and he had a lot of heart tonight, and I think he should call it a wrap. I don't know what that guy did for a living before we gave him the shot, but whatever it was, he needs to go back and do that again. He's 0-2 as far as I'm concerned." Number 5. The UFC domain name. One would not believe this could make it to the list of Dana White's regrets in the UFC, since it does not directly involve the UFC fights and fighters like I have talked about earlier, but it remains one of the top regretful decisions Dana White made being a businessman. When UFC was becoming bigger and more popular and the world was going more digital, Dana White saw it important for the promotion to have a website. He decided to use the domain www.ufc.com, but unfortunately, it was already being used by an organization called User Friendly Computers. He had no choice but to buy the domain from them if he must use the domain as he wanted. According to Dana White, they requested an amount of $15,000 higher than what he was willing to pay for, and he outrightly refused, thinking they were demanding too much. The promotion continued to get bigger, and Dana had to eventually buy the domain for much more than the initial price they requested, around $50,000 to $75,000. He definitely has learned from that experience. Number 4. Anderson Silva's retirement fight. Allowing Anderson Silva to fight that last fight against Uriah Hall is one thing that Dana White also regrets. Anderson Silva is one of the greatest fighters to ever lace up the gloves and step into the octagon. He had already fought past his physical prime and was due for retirement, but Dana White allowed him to fight against Uriah Hall as he requested. Anderson was knocked out in the 4th round of the fight, which the UFC called his retirement fight, and Dana White expressed his regret for allowing Anderson to fight one last time. He said, "I made a big mistake. I shouldn't have let him fight this fight tonight, but out of respect to him, he's a legend of the sport and a legend of this company. I did something that I disagreed with. I knew I was right, and tonight proved I was right. Anderson Silva should never fight again." Number 3. Never signing Fedor Emelianenko. If there's any fight that Dana White regrets not making, it is that of Fedor Emelianenko versus Brock Lesnar. He tried all he could to ensure that the fight held but failed. At one point, it was seeming like it would materialize, but Fedor's father passed away and he ultimately decided to retire after that. Number 2. 2009 Sherdog tirade. An occurrence happened in 2009 that can be counted as one of the few regrets of Dana White in the history of UFC. A Sherdog article that reported that certain managers had been barred access to the backstage area and from acquiring UFC credentials was released by Loretta Hunt. Dana responded with a long angry speech that included homophobic slurs. The LGBTQ+ community raged with this response, which forced an apology from Dana White. Dana later declared his regret for using homophobic slurs. Number 1. Howard Hughes. Finally, another regret Dana would have in the UFC was when he relieved Judge Howard Hughes of his duties mid-card after a series of split decisions at UFC Fight Night 48. This led to the UFC releasing an official statement against White's actions while apologizing to Howard Hughes on White's behalf after an internal review of the situation. Dana White was criticized for overstepping his bounds. He later admitted to his wrongdoing and stated he wouldn't repeat such. I'm sure you enjoyed this video, so do well to like this video and subscribe to this channel if you are yet to. Also, do not forget to hit the notification bell so you can be promptly notified when more content like this one are uploaded. Goodbye and see you in the next video.